My name's Richie Hyden. I'm the co-founder and COO of Iris TV. And really, Iris TV, we're what we call a video intelligence company. And really what we specialize in is sort of connecting and unifying video level data so that we can power better business outcomes, better user experiences and consumer experiences across all formats of video, connected TV, online video, in-app, to sort of drive value for our customers. Context is back, and it's definitely a really exciting time to be working, in the contextual space, and specifically in video and CTV. And I think from our perspective, there are really sort of three main factors that are leading to the excitement. Number one is that contextual has been around for a long time. This isn't sort of something that's being created now, and it actually does drive performance, which is obviously extremely important to the marketers. So I think one reason that people are excited about it is introducing, a new data set to a format that hasn't had it before, where we, can see increase in return on ad spend, engagement, click-through rates, completion rates, and there's, we're seeing some amazing, performance across the inventory sets that we're currently powering in market. So I think number one is that it does bring enhanced performance. The second and maybe the biggest subject of everyone at the moment is the change in the privacy regulation and sort of how first party and third party data is going to be used in the future. Obviously with the demise of the cookie and third party targeting, it does start to erode a percentage of addressable targeting segments for audience based targeting. And in the absence of cookies, the industry really looking for alternative solutions, and we think that contextual will be basically at the center of the decision universe for targeting, for verification, for measurement, for planning. There's a lot of different applications. So we think that the sort of global privacy regulation is a big driver. And then the third one is just the growth in CTV and the transition of TV dollars. And we'll get a little bit more, I'm sure, into sort of the nuts and bolts and how this works, but especially, due to COVID-19 and the changes in consumer consumption habits, we're seeing an explosion in CTV consumption, and that's starting to open up a transition in TV buying dollars. And one of the issues that's arising is that of transparency. There's not a lot of data in CTV yet, so obviously a very new format. There hasn't been video level sort of contextual information for buyers to decision off of, and obviously a very important data set in TV buying today. So those are sort of the three things that we think are sort of exciting about the space at the moment. Yeah, I mean, in the streaming space, historically there hasn't been really any transparency around the actual content that a consumer is watching. So now there has been the beginnings of some additional signal, app level information, perhaps the network name, so sort of more aggregate information. But for a variety of reasons, both sort of strategic positioning and legal, things like show and series and episode information hasn't been able to be passed. And when you really think about the buyer on the other end, that does present a lot of issues. Where is your advertising running? That's the first one. Once it has ran, where did it perform well? Right? How do I actually measure it and determine how to optimize my spend or verify that it actually did run in a place that was suitable for the brand? And so what we've been seeing working with our CTV customers is how do we look at their entire video library on a clip by clip or episode by episode level and help them analyze what that content is actually about. That's sort of number one, using third party contextual and brand safety companies that we help bring to market. And so how do we sort of view under the hood what that content's about? So step one. But step two is how do we unify the insight into standard taxonomies that a buyer can buy against at scale. So not having all these individual bespoke taxonomies where every single publisher defines that themselves, it just doesn't scale. So we're seeing great adoption in the CTV vertical of publishers looking to add transparency to their inventory. And from a buyer perspective, or from a sort of how to leverage that data perspective, We're seeing that data used in direct deals, programmatic deals, both PG deals, open marketplace PMP deals, but also the beginning of sort of enabling buy-side offerings, so pre-bid and post-bid verification. So it really, again, depends on the CTV partner and how they think about their inventory being packaged and offered to their buyers. So it's interesting when you kind of think about targeting individuals. You've got the very granular targeting the individual, demographics, typically demographic based, age, gender, geolocation, purchasing habits. That gives you a very granular understanding as to whether we think that consumer may be the right one to receive a certain brand message. Now, in the absence of that, not that we believe it's going to be gone completely, but it will definitely change. Contextual can take a huge role in creating cohorts, right? So if you're a brand marketer looking to reach people who are in the market for buying a new car, how do you actually put your brand advertisement in front of the consumer at a moment in time where they're actually watching auto-related content? And how do you start to measure the impact of brand suitability and alignment between the brand message and the content the consumer's watching to drive an outcome? So we don't think about sort of identity and contextual as being sort of delinked and decoupled. Everything's sort of an and statement. And we are seeing buyers start to use this for layering and sort of creating cohorts and clusters, and then really over time understanding what is working, right? Can I achieve sort of reach and frequency on a contextual level without having to go to just people-based individual targeting mechanisms? Obviously, as those the availability of those data sets change. It's actually relatively straightforward. So as a little bit of added sort of background on Iris specifically, we're sort of, as I said, in the business of sort of connecting relatively disparate data sets to unlock video level information. Now, what that really means is that we've built basically a connectivity layer that sits between really where content is stored, sort of content management systems, where content is viewed, video players, apps, and front-end environments, and the buying and selling community. Right? Those are the three sort of legs of the stool. So how it works from a relatively high level is that publishers provide Iris with really content feeds or access points to their content management systems so that we're able to ingest really what we call reference files to the videos in their library. So pull that data into the Iris platform. Now, all of that data is formatted in different ways. So CMSs are all specific to the publisher. And so we go through a unification process and how we standardize that data and create really what we call a common data model, right? Sort of the Iris standard, sort of step number one. Now, once we've done that, we provide those individual videos to context and brand safety data companies that we work with so that they can analyze that content. So sort of think about us as sending that video information out to the partners, allowing them to score and apply their opinion, right? Contextual categories or perhaps brand safety definitions, and then send those definitions back to Iris so that we understand now what the library looks like. So that's step number one, just providing Iris a feed. And then step number two is activating that data. And so Iris sits between the video player and the content management system. And as a consumer clicks play on a connected TV device, it sends a little message to Iris about what content they're going to watch. And we simply vehicle the definitions into the publisher's ad server. And working obviously with people like yourselves, Iris is compatible with every ad server on the market, and that enables to put content level transparent data alongside the ad opportunity running in that content. So that's sort of really how simple it is. Provide a content feed. Iris does the ingestion, standardization, and data creation. And then we move to sort of an activation point where we provide that data to the ad server. And once we've done those things, it's really then up to the publisher how they want to leverage that data. It could be a model that fits a large broadcaster to use that for direct deals, right? And they can leverage that as targeting out of the ad server. That could be one approach. For a lot of our programmatic focused partners, they may want to provide those segments to their SSP partners, where the SSP can curate private marketplaces based on the topic of content that a consumer is watching. So those could be two different sell-side options available, or they may choose to offer that data through the bid stream and allow a DSP to perhaps apply the targeting on their end. We think it's a really exciting time to be a publisher in CTV because all of those decisions are theirs to make. They're the ones who control the leverage of where the data is created, presented, and able to be bought and sold against, and that obviously provides a lot of leverage back to the sell side. Yeah, we've been really, really surprised. Probably asked that question about 6 months ago. Would have said, unlikely that DR, would be an applicable, segment. But we're actually seeing, fantastic performance for DR marketers again, because it does perform. It is a more effective way to buy with higher return on the dollars spent. So yeah, in terms of who's using it, we're seeing adoption across the board. Both brand campaigns, conversion campaigns, awareness campaigns of all different shapes and sizes. Typical CPM increase, we're seeing anywhere from sort of 25 to 35, 40% increase in effective CPMs. We're seeing big increases in CTR and click-through rates for VCR, for our OLV publishers. So that's helping to drive the CPMs up as most of the advertisers start looking at cost per completed view metrics and what the performance is. So yeah, across the board, really all different types of brand campaigns. 100%. I mean, contextual, what our opinion, our sort of thesis is what will happen in the market for connected TV and video is what already took place in search, in social, in display. It's going to happen in streaming. And that is the need for content level transparency as to where a brand message is running. Obviously, contextual sort of came to be through the search world, and obviously owning share of voice and understanding how a certain search term impacts a brand advertising campaign is it's just the standard now at this point in buying search. The same happened in display, understanding the page and the contextual nature of the page in which your display ad is running. That has migrated into online video. So used very heavily in pre, mid, and post-roll video advertising is understanding the page that the consumer is actually on. And so we think of this as a new evolution. I think at this point, from at least from a brand safety perspective, near 100% of buys that are running on, online video or display have it applied, right? It's an always-on approach. And contextual obviously is a big part of the market now, for all the reasons that we sort of covered. So we think, I think the reason that it hadn't moved into CTV yet is really a technological issue, not a supply or demand wanting to bring it. It was more just connecting the pipes and making it possible at scale. The beauty about contextual actually has nothing to do with the consumer at all. Now, always checks and balances to go through, so that's perfectly fine and part of the process. But yeah, contextual is really just basically putting a microscope and looking at the content that a consumer is watching at a certain moment in time. It is totally privacy compliant in all regions, and so for us, we're operating globally with different partners and buyers. It has no connectivity to the consumer in any way. It's not tied to IP addresses or login information or any of the sensitive info. So we look at it as definitely a very big defensive strategy to what we currently seeing as global privacy regulation in lots of different fashions. And again, for all the reasons we covered, whether you have first-party data, it could be looked at as a layering, and how do you add more information in the absence of third-party tracking. Or it could be the primary data set that you use in an instance where you either have a very small amount or no first-party data at all. So yeah, we think it's a really fabulous opportunity for publishers to offer something to buyers that they actually control, can regulate, mandate, and be in compliance while using. So from where to put the contextual, all the publishers we're working with are definitely adopting it everywhere. Certainly up to the publisher, but no reason not to. It's just really adding a layer of transparency. in terms of how the contextual vendors that we work with actually create the segments, part of the fun for us is that a lot of different contextual companies come from different backgrounds. We've got some providers who are coming from a display sort of focused business where the technology is very robust and being used in either a sell side or a buy side sort of targeting mechanism, analyzing the text on a page. And so their evolution is now into how do we analyze a video. We've also got partners who are coming out of social. So partners who are coming from the YouTube environments where they do understand how to work with video specifically, but they're now being introduced to the programmatic world outside the walls of YouTube, which obviously has a lot of fragmentation and different, different challenges, just how to make the data available. And then we're also seeing more natural language processing sort of technology companies that have robust offerings from a tech perspective, but haven't historically applied them to contextual specifically. So sort of bringing a blend of those sort of three types of vendors in brings a lot of different approaches on how to do contextual, which we view as a real strength, right? There's no one right way to do it, lots of different nuances. And so we think that, by offering a sort of a marketplace approach, on our end, how do we make all of those solutions available to, CTV publishers to leverage in different ways? I think there are two huge opportunities where we sort of advise publishers that this is net new budgets. This is not just growing the share of what you currently have. And that's definitely the transition of social budgets outside the walled gardens into the, the open market, where there is high quality inventory, very large reach, and scale right now, especially in the CTV space. So by offering data sets that buyers are used to leveraging and using in the walled gardens, you make yourself addressable for them to actually migrate those budgets. So that's definitely a big driver. The biggest is the television, is the TV budget transition. So in TV, show and series and episode and content level, transparency is table stakes. It's been around obviously for years, and TV buyers know how to measure and understand the effectiveness of their reach and frequency against tentpole events and shows and series. And it's extremely challenging for a TV buyer, advertiser to move that budget if they're not able to target the types of content that they want to be associated with. So targeting is where, number one. Number two, then to verify that is actually where it ran, and to have ideally a third party help them with that measurement. And then to take those two sets of learnings and actually incorporate them into planning. We think that the ability for contextual data to be incorporated into the planning stage is what will move real large sums of dollars out of TV and into CTV. And what we seeing in the market right now is that the explosion in supply and consumption is not being matched by the demand shift yet. And we think a big reason for that is the lack of transparency. So we think, again, if CTV publishers can add transparency to their inventory, control how they want that data to be leveraged, of course, then there's huge opportunities for new budgets from those two sources to move. We're very biased, but we do think that contextual is the single most important data set being introduced into CTV, and that it really it will be the cornerstone for how buyers and sellers are targeting, verifying, measuring, and planning their budgets. It's exactly what happened in display, search and social, and we think it's going to do exactly the same here in CTV and video.